meditates on the seer, the ancient, the ruler, subtler than the subtle, the supporter of all, whose form is beyond conception, who is sun-coloured beyond the darkness. So in this verse, Shri Krishna gives us a description of the supreme truth. What is supreme truth like? What do we have to think about after seeing the supreme truth? In this verse, Krishna gives us different qualities of the supreme truth. So we're about to go in and understand these qualities. The first quality of all is Gavim. So that's the first word in this verse. The supreme truth is Gavim. A Gavi is probably someone, you guys probably think that Gavi is someone who's a poet, but Gavi is not someone who just makes words rhyme. A Gavi is not someone who just writes literature. The definition of Gavi is one who gives devotees a discourse on the path of God. This is a person who walks on the path of the supreme truth and along with him holds the fingers of many other people. This is a true Gavi. A person who makes himself make effort towards going towards God and gives many other people this inspiration is a true Kavi. Srimad Adi Chakracharya writes in his commentary that a Kavi is actually a revolutionary seer. Ramanujacharya uses the words in the same commentary, and he says a person who lives in the past is not a Kavi. He has a wisdom of the past, but he has a vision of the future, and this type of person is a true Kavi. A Kavi is therefore someone who is revolutionary, a person who has the courage to oppose the imperfections and unrighteousness of the present. A Kavi must be a revolutionary. A person who just makes words rhyme is not a Kavi. A person who has the vision of what society will need in 20, 50, 200 or even 2,000 years is someone who we can describe as a Kavi. And someone who thinks about this is therefore defined as a revolutionary. In the issue of Upanishad, while describing the supreme truth, the word Kavim is used again. It said, Kavir Manishi Paribhu Swayambhu, and this is translated as the seer, the thinker, the one who is everywhere. Kavi also means knowledgeable, intelligent, and a beautiful thinker. A Kavi thinks about that which in common society one cannot think about, and presents these thoughts in front of society in beautiful words, so that many different people can get inspiration from these beautiful thoughts. This is a Kavi. A Kavi is also someone who is praiseworthy, someone who has knowledge of the truth, who makes efforts in order to know truth. He doesn't just, the analogy here is used as someone who doesn't just splash in a shallow pool, because when you splash in a shallow pool, you don't really get very far, and you just splash water all over the place. But someone who goes into the water to make efforts to find the jewels. A person who just splashes in a shallow pool ruins his feet and also the clothes of the person standing next to him, and therefore can't develop himself and can't develop those around him. A Kavi is also translated as a metaphysicist. The scripts even go so far as to say that a Kavi is knowledgeable about all three periods of the time, the present, past, and the future. This is because he knows about the past, he's living in the present, and yet his perception reaches the future. We wonder why a Kavi is actually knowledgeable about all three of these states of time, and this is because a Kavi is also progressive, and his whole perspective on life is completely different. Often people say the lower down you are, then your vision is more limited. The higher up and the broader your vision is, the more open-minded you are. So let's take an example of this. If you're standing on a building, and you're standing on the first floor of the building, and there's somebody who's, say, for example, on the 12th floor of the building, then obviously the person on the 12th floor will have a broader vision, and they'll be able to see things that the person on the first floor can't see. The person on the 12th floor has a developed view. A person who has knowledge of all three time periods hasn't got any magic, but it's just that his attitude has changed, and he has a very broad vision. So, for example, a person on the 12th floor can see that a car is coming from very far away, and he's able to tell the person on the first floor the car is coming. The person on the first floor can't see the car because the person can't see that car which is in the future. The person on the 12th floor, the person on the 12th floor, the car is actually present, and when that car comes closer, then the person on the first floor says that the car is coming, but the person on the 12th floor, he's been seeing it for a long time, so he's able to adjust. The person on the first floor thinks that the person on the 12th floor is such a knowledgeable person because he can see the car, which the person on the first floor could never see. Yet, it's just the fact that the person on the 12th floor has a broad vision. Additionally, the person who is a true Kavi keeps on enhancing his past. The person on the first floor, for example, can see the car when it's only a few feet away, but once the car's gone, the person on the 12th floor can still see this car, because the car hasn't actually gone away from his vision. Therefore, his past keeps enhancing. The higher someone goes in life, then the more their periods of time fall within their vision. So a Kavi has knowledge of all three time periods, and this is because he's developed himself. The word Brahman has also been used to describe a Kavi, and the word sun has also been used to describe a Kavi, because a Kavi should be radiant like the sun. At the beginning of the discourses, when we do Shabbat prayers, one of the prayers reads as follows, Rutam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami, and this means, I will speak what is the ultimate knowledge and the truth. And that is the roaring of a Kavi, someone who speaks the truth. And therefore, a Rishi is also a Kavi, because he wishes to tell society about knowledge. He has attained this knowledge, and then he discovers how to say it. He speaks the ultimate knowledge and the truth. And therefore, if you wish to define a kavi in simple language, you might say that a kavi is someone who experiences the truth, and he experiences knowledge which can't be seen by means of the eyes, and he reveals it in front of other people, and this is the true kavi, because he experiences through words those things which other people can't perceive. One who perceives that which is beyond the senses is also a kavi, and shows us that which can't be caught by the senses. A kavi therefore thinks about the truth of Brahman. So that's multiple meanings of the kavi. The next word that Sri Krishna uses in this is Puranam. So we might think that the meaning of Puran is ancient, primitive, or aged. However, the definitions of Puran that commentators give is very different to this. Srimad Shankaracharya defines Puran as eternal. Just because something's ancient doesn't mean it's died. If you look at the truth of Brahman, then how old is it? It's just so old. In our terminology, in terms of years, but actually, what actually means perpetual. Ramanujacharya defines Puran as primeval, or one who existed always. That which is ancient, yet is new, is actually Puran. So therefore, if you look at it from one perspective, is the Supreme Soul ancient or is it not? The Supreme Soul is ancient. The Supreme Soul is of old age, and yet at the same time, the Supreme Soul is a youth. The Supreme Soul is young. So therefore, you may wonder why we've chosen the words old age in inverted commas to describe this when we translate it. And this is because if we say that someone is 60 or 70 or 80, then we define that as old age. But how many years has the Supreme Soul had? Is the Supreme Soul of old age or not? The Supreme Soul is of old age, and yet at the same time it is young. A youth aged 15 years in America asked Guruji the question at a seminar, why is it that all the idols and photos of gods that we have show God as clean-shaven? Could it not be that Sri Krishna may have not shaved for 2 days? Could it not happen that Sri Ramchandraji has not shaved today? How could this not happen? Why is there not one picture where God has grey hair? Could this not have been possible? It's been written in the Srimad Bhagavad that Krishna lived on the earth for 125 years. How is it possible that he had black hair for 125 years? He'd been so young and fresh for 25 years. Is that actually possible? So the Guruji answered in the following way. He said, Shri Krishna had body on the earth, and it may have happened his hair had gone white. Of course this may have happened, because the body must naturally develop, and hair does go grey. And he is the supreme, but however, we don't show it in this way because he's a supreme truth of Brahman, and therefore old age never touches him. The white hair or wrinkles may have come on his body, but no wrinkles have actually come in his heart. No wrinkles would have come in his zeal or in his strength of action. He is always forever new. Despite being ancient, he is new. And this is the truth of Brahman. It can never actually get old. So Guruji gives us a new logical reason for this. If you say that someone's become old, the natural next step to then determine is that then it will die. So say, for example, someone becomes 90, 100, when are they going to live till? After old age, after you have youth and then you have old age, and the death is a natural phenomenon to come next. However, the Supreme Soul is imperishable, and there is no step after this. The Supreme Soul is eternal. Our common understanding is that during the time of youth, one doesn't even think about death, but when old age comes, everyone starts to count one's days. It's when white hairs come that we begin to count our days. While everyone's hair is black, then nobody thinks about death. Nobody has worry about this. Each and every person is living in their own enjoyments. The Supreme Soul is imperishable. So the next word that we come across in this verse is, and it's the third word. So the first one is Gavi, the second is Pranam. The third one that Sri Krishna uses is Anushashitram. So this actually means the ruler of the whole world. It also means someone who shows direction. So we saw earlier in the chapter in last week's class that a compass is necessary and a watch alone is not enough. So the analogy that was used is that a watch tells you the time, but a compass gives you direction. And you can't have just a watch, you also need a compass. That which shows us direction and that which instructs us in the right way is Anushashitaram. He who runs his kingdom in the right way is defined as Anushashitaram. And he who punishes criminals, for example, and whose instructions the world remains on is also defined as Anushashitaram. So then we may wonder, on whose instruction does the world run? The world runs on the instructions of the Supreme Soul. The entire system that's here in the world is because of the instructions of the Supreme Soul. And Guruji sometimes wonders why human beings take so long to understand this. People think at the beginning that whatever they want will happen. However, as soon as they experience life a little further and start to make efforts, and things don't occur always according to their instructions, they suddenly realise that those instructions belong to someone else. And this is why human beings often say that nothing they expected to happen actually happened. If indeed what's happened is not what you expected, then who is the person who decided what was to happen? The answer of this question is there's an energy that decided that which would happen. The person's instructions came only because this person is Anushashitaram. The fourth quality that Sri Krishna described in this verse is sukshma pi sukshma, and this is translated as subtler than the subtlest. The Shruti says, Anurariyam Mahato Mahiyan. The fifth quality that Sri Krishna describes in this verse is Sarvasiddhata, and this means the supporter of all. This is someone who creates all, who produces all, who nourishes all, and who systemizes all. This is defined as Sarvasiddhata, the supporter of all. Therefore, who gave us birth? Who produced us? We don't even know this. Who looked after us? We don't even know this. Who systemizes all of this? Many people often say, what would happen if I wasn't here? Or who would handle all of this if it wasn't for me? You go and see. I mean, often people say this in the working world, oh, if I wasn't here, it wouldn't continue. But that's not true. Everything will continue. As soon as you leave, everything will continue to work just as well. It doesn't make a difference if you go. Just like, for example, you pull your finger out of water and the space is then taken up where your finger initially was. In the same way, the water will continue to flow and the system will continue to run without you. There is only one Sarvasiddhata, the supporter of all. The sixth quality that Sri Krishna talks about here is Achintya Rupaha, and that is translated as whose form is beyond conception. So the Supreme Soul is beyond conception because the mind doesn't reach there. The Supreme Soul is so great, and that is why the mind that is within the limits of the human mind doesn't reach there. The human beings can't think about him in this way. The Supreme Soul doesn't fall within the catch of the mind. Indeed, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, it says, Yato vachoni vartante aprapya manasa sa. This is translated as, this is an experience that cannot be described by words, but it can be described by experience. The seventh quality is Aditya Varanaha, and this is translated as sun-coloured. The Supreme Soul is sun-coloured like the sun and is radiant. The Supreme Soul is impressive and has the same form of light. The sun gives light to us in our world, and that which gives light to the sun is this Brahman. Brahman is such that he gives light to things that are radiant and splendid. We run a house, but we may question who runs us. This is Brahman. A person says, I run all of this, I run my business, I run my house, I do this, I do that. And that may be fine, and that you're running all of this, but the question is, who is running you? There must be some energy, and this energy is Brahman, and this is why Brahman is translated as Aditya Varanaha, sun-coloured. The eighth quality is Tamasat Parasta. This is translated as that which is beyond darkness. In the Gita, there are many meanings of the word tam which are given, and it's a word which is worth understanding. Many different meanings and qualities of the word tam come up in different verses of the Gita. So let's take a look at this list. In the first verse, tam means ankar, which means darkness, and this is the first meaning. Sri Krishna says the Supreme Soul is beyond tam, which is darkness. Tam means a variety of different things, so I'm just going to go through and list 21 meanings that you have. So the first one, as I said, was andhkar, which is darkness. The second one is agnan, which is ignorance. The third is moh, which is delusion. The fourth is pramad, which is a mistake. The fifth is aras, which is laziness. The sixth is nidra, which is sleeping. The seventh is aprakash, which is unreleased. The eighth, apravritti, which is inaction. The ninth, adapatan, which is destruction. The 10th is ashrada, which is no faith. The 11th is swart, which is selfishness. The 12th is adavrutta, which is stinginess. The 13th is murta, which is foolishness. The 14th is the intelligence with which one wishes to destroy another person, or the attitude with which one wishes to cheat others. The 15th is ichta, which is lowliness. 16th is avichar, thoughtlessness. 17th is sahatva, which is untruth. 18th is kid, which is sadness. 19th is birgasutrita, which is falsity. 20th is ahamkar, which is ego. 21st is viparit gyan, which is antithetical knowledge. And 22nd is hinsa, which is violence. All of these, there's quite a few of them, are the characteristics of the tamo, which is the dull mode of nature. Later on in the 17th chapter of the Gita, Sri Krishna will describe the sattvic, which is good, the rajasic, which is passionate, and tamasic, dull type of donations. So, adadrutva donations are those which don't leave the hands of the giver. Murta means one which is doing good for himself and one that's doing for himself and he doesn't need foolishness, which he doesn't even realize because he considers this to be heaviness, and that's murta, which is foolishness. There's a famous example of Kalidas, who was initially described as deluded. Before Kalidas attained knowledge, he was sent to chop wood, and he was sitting on a tree branch, cutting exactly the same branch that he was sitting on. So to you and I, that would obviously be foolish because we know that he's going to fall over. A person was passing below him and shouted at him, "What are you doing?" And Kalidas said, "Well, I'm cutting the tree branch." The person told him that he would fall off. And Kalidas said, "Well, how would I fall off? How can I fall?" And the more he was cutting the wood, then the more he considered himself successful at cutting this wood. But he didn't realize he was going to fall. So this is delusion, murta. It's characteristic of the definition of tamas. So the intellect from which one wishes to destroy other people and attitude with which one wishes to cheat other people is also defined as tamas. Many people consider themselves clever when they try to destroy other people or try to cheat other people. They say they did so well to get that person stuck in a hole. But why is this the case? In fact, when you do such a thing, you fall into a hole and not them. Why do we want to put someone else in a hole? I once read somewhere, this is Guruji speaking, that he read once somewhere that there was a man who wanted to become an overnight millionaire. So he was thinking about the options that he had in order to do this. He came up with a plan and took the little money that he had to a sweet shop. So he told the sweet shop owner, the shopkeeper, that I would like 5,000 chocolates. He selected the chocolates that he wanted, and he told the shopkeeper that he wanted 5,000. The value of the chocolates were only 10 rupees each, so 10 paisa each. The shopkeeper told him to measure them in kilos rather than numbers. The person said that he doesn't know them in terms of kilos and that he still just wanted 5,000 chocolates. The man told the shopkeeper to just give him the chocolates. So the shopkeeper thought that he must have come from a wealthy house and that it's fine, and that he may have just been told to buy a certain number of chocolates. So the shopkeeper told him he would count each of these 5,000 chocolates and give them to him. The person then asked the shopkeeper to tell him how much this would cost. The shopkeeper then calculated this, that if it was 10 paisa each and the 5,000 chocolates, the total would come to 500 rupees. So the person took out the 500 rupee notes from his pocket and gave them to the chocolate shopkeeper and told him to keep them because he was going to bring his people to carry these chocolates back. The shopkeeper said fine and took the 500 rupee note, and there was nothing left to be said. The person then left the chocolate shop and he went to the market. He went to the jeweler and he selected 5 sets that he liked. The jeweler then asked for a payment, and this person said to him and tricked him and said to him that he'd forgotten his checkbook and his credit card was at home and that he couldn't go around with the amount of cash required to buy 5 jewellery sets. So the person told the jeweler that he would come back tomorrow, and he'd been so polite and kind to the jeweler that the jeweler thought, well, this is fine, I don't mind, I don't mind whether he comes back tomorrow or not. And he said, you can take the jewellery whether it matters, and it doesn't matter. And he said to the jeweler, the person then said to the jeweler, but I've not given you any money for all this jewellery. And the jeweler said, well, don't worry, I'll send my workers with you so that they can go to where you live in order to collect the money. What does it matter? So this person said, fine. The jeweler then sent one of his workers with the person, and this person said, the jeweler said it will cost 5,000 rupees. The person then took this worker from the jewellery shop to the sweet shop, and he said to the worker, I've got some work to do, so you stay here. He went inside the shop, told the shopkeeper of the chocolate shop, please give these 5,000 sweets which you have, which I've paid for, and give these to this worker. The person told the shopkeeper to give the worker the chocolates, and the shopkeeper said, yes sir, I'll give them to him. The shopkeeper thought that this person must be his worker and they has to give the 5,000 sweets to the worker. But in the meanwhile, this person ran away with the jewellery, and for about 10-15 minutes, obviously this chocolate shopkeeper was calculating how many 5,000 chocolates were. He thought as soon as he'd finished, then he'd give them to the worker. The worker just sat there thinking he didn't have to leave the shop until he'd have the 5,000 rupees. So this guy who'd run off with the jewellery had tricked both parties. The shopkeeper gave the worker a big plastic bag, a big package, and he said, the worker asked the shopkeeper what it was, and the shopkeeper said, well, it's the 5,000 that the worker told the worker has to take and go home. The worker asked whether it was really in there. Therefore, the person had tricked the jeweler by getting him to say that the set costs 5,000, but he didn't classify the quantity or the value. He just said 5,000. So in this example, you see that the person has the intellect with which to trick 2 types of people, and this type of attitude and cheating is considered to be tamas, and this is also defined as darkness. Therefore, Sri Krishna will show us in the 18th chapter of the Gita what characteristics of the tamasi dull mode of nature are. In this verse, the Supreme Soul is described as tamasa parasta, and therefore beyond darkness. And this means that the Supreme Soul is beyond all of those 22 characteristics that I list above. Therefore, what is the Supreme Soul like? In this one phrase, tamasa parasta, beyond darkness, the Gita has described so many qualities of the Supreme Soul. For example, that the Supreme Soul is jnanmay, full of knowledge, nishay, certainty, nirdoshta, faultless, utsaha, heartening, unnati, advancement, jagruti, awakeness, prakash, light, tejasvita, radiance, vikashil, development, utkarsh, eminent, datrutva, supportive, gnanruva, knowing, subicha, well-wishing, suvichar, of pure thought, ahimsa, non-violent, ashatya, truth, sarartha, natural, khed-rahita, which is without sadness, anand, bliss, yogya karmanatavara, which is an incentive to perform the right action, and satya root, the true form. Therefore, we may wonder, after looking at all these different qualities, what happens to one who performs anuchintan on Supreme Soul, who meditates on Supreme Soul and remembers the Supreme Soul at all times? Sri Krishna will describe in the next verse what happens to one who meditates on the Supreme Soul described in this verse.